A 10-year-old boy put on an oversized cleaner's uniform, pulled a cap over his face, and walked into his father's company, looking for a woman worthy enough to marry the richest man in Korea. Nobody suspected a child pushing a cleaning cart. That was the entire point. He watched how women treated the invisible. Most failed instantly. Then a struggling single mother handed him food she could barely afford. 3 days in a row, never asking for anything back. She had no idea she was being tested. The glass shattered against the marble floor. Not from anger, from grief. Park Jae-won, the wealthiest man in South Korea, stood in his empty penthouse at 2 a.m., holding the broken pieces of a photo frame. Inside it, his late wife, smiling on their wedding day. 7 years. And the pain hadn't dulled. Not even slightly. His son, Min-jun, 10 years old, appeared in the doorway in his pajamas. He'd heard the crash. He rubbed his eyes and looked at his father. This powerful man who could buy entire cities, crouched on the floor, picking up broken glass like a broken man. "Father," Min-jun whispered. Jae-won looked up. He straightened immediately, cleared his throat. The billionaire mask went back on. "Go back to bed, son." But Min-jun didn't move. He walked forward carefully, avoiding the glass, and sat beside his father on the cold floor. Right there. No questions. Just presence. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Min-jun looked up and asked the question that changed everything. "Father, don't you deserve to be happy too?" Jae-won stared at his son. 10 years old and already carrying wisdom that most adults never find. He sighed. "Happiness is complicated, Min-jun." "It doesn't look complicated," the boy said simply. "You just look lonely." The words landed like a punch. Jae-won turned away toward the window, the Seoul skyline glittering below them. Millions of lights, millions of lives, and here he was, surrounded by everything and holding nothing. "I made your mother a promise," he said quietly. "I told her I would never bring a stranger into our home, just for the sake of company." "So, what would make it not a stranger?" Min-jun asked. Jae-won looked at his son for a long moment. "Someone you chose," he said. "The only woman I will ever marry again is someone you, my own son, believe is worthy of our family." Min-jun nodded slowly, as if he was filing that away somewhere important. Jae-won ruffled his hair and sent him to bed. He thought nothing more of it. He should have paid more attention. Meet Park Jae-won, 38. Steel jaw, sharp eyes. A man whose name made CEOs nervous and whose silence made boardrooms hold their breath. He built his empire from scratch after his father's company collapsed. He did it in 9 years. Nobody thought he could. He proved them all wrong. But behind closed doors, he ate dinner alone every night. His housekeeper said he sometimes sat at the dining table for an hour without touching his food. Just sitting. Just remembering. Meet Park Min-jun, 10 years old. His father's sharpest reflection. Quiet, observant, dangerously intelligent for his age. He watched everything. He noticed everything. And now, he had a mission. And then there is Grace. Grace Amara, 31. A black woman with a laugh that could warm a cold room and eyes that saw through people immediately. She was raising her 3-year-old daughter, Lily, completely alone. No family support. No safety net. Just her 2 hands, her stubborn heart, and a part-time job at a childcare center inside one of Park Jae-won's company facilities. She didn't know any of this yet. She didn't know that a 10-year-old boy had just made a decision that would completely redirect her life. But that night, while Jae-won stared at Seoul's skyline and Grace rocked Lily to sleep in her small apartment across the city, something invisible had already been set in motion. 3 weeks after that night, Min-jun walked into his father's home office with a notebook. Jae-won looked up from his laptop. "What is that?" "A plan," Min-jun said, sitting down across from him like he was about to pitch a business proposal. Jae-won leaned back slowly. "A plan for what?" "To find your wife." Silence. Then Jae-won laughed. Genuinely, unexpectedly. "Min-jun, you made a promise," the boy said calmly. I'm taking it seriously. Jae-won studied his son. That expression. That focus. It was frightening sometimes, how much the boy resembled his mother. All right, Jae-won said carefully. What's your plan? Min-jun opened the notebook. He had actually written things down. Jae-won leaned forward, curious despite himself. Rich women will act a certain way around you, because they know who you are, Min-jun said. So we can't test them around you. We need to test them around someone they think doesn't matter. And who would that be? Min-jun looked at him directly. Me. As a cleaner. Jae-won stared. Absolutely not. Father. You own 12 facilities. I go to one. I watch how women treat the workers. Character doesn't hide when people think nobody important is watching. Jae-won opened his mouth. Closed it. The logic was infuriatingly sound. You're 10, Jae-won said. And I'm right, Min-jun replied. 2 days later, against every instinct he had, Jae-won allowed it. With conditions, security nearby, always. A trusted staff member as cover. And the moment anything felt wrong, it was over. Min-jun agreed to every term without blinking. He arrived at the Seocho facility on a Tuesday morning in a gray cleaner's uniform that was 3 sizes too big. The security team had been briefed quietly. Nobody else knew. He pushed a cleaning cart through the lobby. Not a single person looked at him. That, he noted in his book, was already information. He watched for 3 days before he noticed Grace. She was hard to miss, not because she was loud, but because she was the opposite. She moved through that building like she genuinely cared about every single person in it. She called the security guard by his first name. She held the elevator for people who were still far away. She helped an elderly visitor find the right floor even though it made her late for her own shift. And when she passed Min-jun in the hallway with his cart, she actually stopped. Are you new? She asked, smiling. He nodded, keeping his head low. I'm Grace. If you ever get lost in here, just ask me. This building is confusing at first. She said it like she meant it. Then she kept walking. Min-jun stood very still in the hallway for a long moment. Then he pulled out his notebook and wrote her name down. It was a Wednesday when Grace first noticed the cleaner boy didn't eat. She spotted him sitting alone in the corner of the staff break room during lunch. No food in front of him. Just staring at the table. Trying to look like he wasn't hungry. Grace glanced around. Nobody else seemed to notice. She walked over. Hey, have you eaten today? He looked up quickly. Yes. I ate before I came. She tilted her head. When was that? He hesitated half a second too long. She didn't push. She just nodded and went back to her table. But the next morning, she arrived at work with a container of jollof rice and fried plantain. She found Min-jun near the supply room. Here, she said, handing it to him. I made extra by accident. He looked at the container, then at her. You didn't have to. I know, she interrupted cheerfully. But food is better shared. Enjoy. She walked away before he could refuse. The next day, she did it again. Different food. Same cheerfulness. Same refusal to make it a big deal. On the third day, Min-jun was actually waiting near the supply room. He didn't admit that. But he was there. That afternoon, he called his father from a bathroom stall. Father, I found someone interesting. Jae-won was in a meeting but stepped out. Already? She's been feeding me for 3 days, Min-jun said. She doesn't know me. She has no reason to. But she noticed I wasn't eating and she just fixed it. A pause. What's her name? Jae-won asked. Grace. How old? I think early 30s. She has a daughter. She talks about her sometimes. Another pause. Longer this time. Keep watching, Jae-won said quietly. Don't rush. Min-jun looked at the jollof rice container still in his hand. I'm not rushing, he said. I just think you should know she's different. He said it plainly. Without drama. The way children say true things. Jae-won sat with those words for the rest of his meeting. On a Friday afternoon, everything shifted. Grace had no babysitter. Her usual arrangement fell through at the last minute. She had no choice but to bring Lily, her 3-year-old daughter, to work for 1 hour while she completed a handover report. She got permission. She kept her close. Lily was small, round-cheeked, and completely fearless. Minjun was pushing his cart past the childcare hallway when a tiny hand grabbed his sleeve. He stopped and looked down. Lily looked up at him with absolute confidence. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he said, surprised. "What's your name?" "Minjun." She frowned like this was a complicated word. Then she decided, "I'm going to call you Cleaner Uncle." Grace appeared behind her immediately. "Lily, I'm so sorry." She started to pull her back. But Minjun had knelt down to Lily's eye level. "I don't mind," he said. Lily beamed. She grabbed his hand and started showing him her toy, a small stuffed rabbit with one missing eye. She explained the entire rabbit's life story in 90 seconds. Minjun listened to every word. Grace watched this with something soft in her expression. When Lily was finally distracted by a passing colleague, Grace crouched beside Minjun. "She doesn't usually warm up to people that fast," she said quietly. "She's smart," he said. "Kids know." Grace smiled. "Yeah, they really do." Later that evening, Minjun sat in the back of his father's car and said nothing for a long time. Jae-won finally asked, "What happened today?" "I met Lily," Minjun said. "Grace's daughter." And Minjun turned and looked at his father with an expression far too old for his face. "Father," he said, "I think I want a little sister." Jae-won went completely still. The car was quiet for a long time. Then, very quietly, Jae-won said, "Tell me about her." And Minjun talked all the way home. 3 weeks in, everything nearly unraveled. A corporate event was held in the east wing of the Seocho facility. Wealthy guests, sponsors, women from prominent Seoul families who had been circling Jae-won's name for years, hoping for an introduction. Minjun, pushing his cart past the restricted corridor, took a wrong turn. He ended up at the entrance of the event hall. 3 women in expensive dresses saw him immediately. "Yeah, cleaner," one of them snapped. "This area is off limits to staff. Can't you read?" Minjun stopped. "I apologize. I took the wrong." "Why are you even speaking?" another one interrupted, laughing. "Just go. And try not to touch anything on your way out." The third woman wrinkled her nose. These facilities really need to be more careful about who they let wander around. Minjun said nothing. He turned the cart slowly. Then he heard a voice cut through the room like a blade. "Excuse me." Grace was standing in the hallway entrance, a folder in her hand, her eyes fixed on the 3 women. The room shifted. "A person's value," Grace said clearly, "is not determined by their job title." One of the women raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "Someone who works here," Grace said simply. "Just like him. And just like you. The last time I checked, we all walk through the same front door." She looked at Minjun. "Are you okay?" He nodded slowly. "Come on," she said. "I'll show you the correct route." She walked away without waiting for a response from the women. Minjun followed her, leaving 3 speechless women behind. When they reached the correct corridor, Grace stopped and turned to him. "You okay?" she asked again. This time softer. "Why did you do that?" he asked. "They could cause problems for you." She shrugged. "Probably. But I'm not able to watch someone get spoken to like that and just walk past. I can't do it." She handed him a small pack of biscuits from her pocket. "Eat something," she said. "And ignore people like that. They're not worth your energy." She walked back to her floor. Minjun stood in that corridor for a full minute. Then he took out his phone and called his father. "Father." "Yes." "It's her," he said. "I'm certain." Jae-won trusted his son. But he needed to see for himself. He had his assistant arrange a quiet staff appreciation luncheon. Casual, no obvious reason for Grace to be suspicious. She was invited along with 4 other employees as part of a team recognition. She arrived in a neat blouse and slacks. No designer anything. She looked completely comfortable. The lunch was held in a private room. A man sat at the head of the table. Distinguished, well-dressed, warm eyes. He introduced himself as Mr. Park. Grace had no idea who he was. "Tell me," J1 said after the food was served, "what do you love most about your work here?" The other employees gave polished answers. Predictable ones. Grace thought for a moment. "The children," she said. "I love that I get to be part of how they experience the world in those early years. It matters more than people realize." "What made you choose this field?" he asked. She smiled. "My daughter. When I was figuring out how to raise her alone, I realized what I actually wanted her surrounded by, people who were genuinely present. So I decided to become that for other children too." J1 studied her. "You're raising her alone?" he asked. Not intrusively. Genuinely. She met his eyes without flinching. "Yes. It's hard sometimes. But she's the best thing in my life, so I don't count the cost." J1 picked up his glass slowly. "You said, hard sometimes," he said. "Not too hard. Not impossible. That's an interesting distinction." Grace looked at him carefully. "Are you testing me, Mr. Park?" A surprised pause. Then J1 smiled, a real one. The kind his staff almost never saw. "What makes you think that?" "The way you ask questions," she said calmly. "You're listening for something specific. That's fine. People are allowed to want to understand other people." She took a bite of her food. "Whatever you're trying to understand, I'd rather you just ask me directly. I'm not complicated." J1 sat back. He thought about every socialite, every matchmaking proposal, every polished woman who had sat across from him over 7 years. Not one of them had ever spoken to him like that. Not one. He looked at his hands. Then he made a decision. Minjun asked to be the one to tell her. He found Grace during her afternoon break, near the outdoor seating area. She was reading something on her phone. Lily's photo was her screensaver, he noticed. He sat down across from her without the cart. Without the uniform. In normal clothes. She looked up and blinked. "Minjun? Why aren't you in your—" She stopped. Something shifted in her expression. "What's going on?" He took a breath. "I need to tell you something. And I need you to hear all of it before you react." She slowly put down her phone. "I'm not a cleaner," he said. "I never was. My name is Park Minjun. Park J1 is my father." The silence was enormous. Grace didn't move. "The man you met at that luncheon," he continued. "That was him. My father. The owner of this company." Her face cycled through confusion, then realization, then something that looked like ice forming. "The food," she said slowly. "Watching how I treated people. The incident with those women. The luncheon." "Yes," he said quietly. She stood up. "I was a test," she said. Her voice was very controlled. "I was an experiment." "Grace." "No." She stepped back. "I treated you like a child who needed kindness. I defended you because it was the right thing to do. Not because I wanted anything from it. And now you're telling me it was all. That someone was watching and evaluating me like I was an animal in a study?" Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. Minjun looked down. "I know how it sounds." "Then why?" she demanded. "Why do it this way?" "Because people are different when they think no one important is watching," he said quietly. "And I needed to see who you really were." "Who I really am," she repeated. She laughed, but it wasn't funny. "I'm someone who just got completely embarrassed." She picked up her things and walked away. Minjun didn't follow her. He sat alone in the outdoor seating area for a long time. Then he called his father. "She knows." How did she take it? She left. A long pause. "Give her 2 days," J1 said. "Then I'll reach out." "Father," Minjun hesitated. She was really hurt. "I know," J1 said. And his voice was heavy with something more than business. "So was I once. But some things are worth the discomfort of honesty." 2 days later, Grace received a letter. Not an email. Not a message. A handwritten letter, delivered to her apartment door. It was from J1. It said, "You told me at lunch that you'd rather someone ask you directly. So here I am, asking directly. Not as a billionaire. As a man who's been alone for 7 years and watched his son light up for the first time in memory. Because of you and your daughter. What impressed me was not what you did when you knew someone was watching. It was everything you did when you believed nobody was. You don't owe me forgiveness. But I would be grateful for the chance to simply talk. No tests. No games. Just honesty. Grace read it 3 times. Then Lily climbed onto her lap and pointed at the paper. What's that, Mama? A letter, Grace said. From who? Grace was quiet for a moment. Someone who was honest, she said finally. Eventually. She called him. They met for coffee, just the 2 of them, in a small place with no cameras and no staff. He came alone. No security visible. She was nervous. She didn't hide it. I don't understand why me, she said, wrapping her hands around her cup. There are women who actually belong in your world. My world, J1 said, is very empty. It looks large from the outside, but it echoes. She looked at him. My son hasn't laughed like that since his mother died, he said. And the first time I heard him laugh again, actually laugh, it was when Lily was telling him about her one-eyed rabbit. Grace smiled despite herself. She takes that rabbit very seriously, she said. As she should, he said. They talked for 2 hours. About real things. About loss and fear and what it meant to build something from nothing. He talked about his wife. She talked about Lily's father leaving before Lily was born. They didn't pretend. It was the most honest conversation J1 had in 7 years. Over the following months, it continued. Slowly. Carefully. No rushing. Lily called Minjun her best friend. She called J1 the tall man, until one afternoon she upgraded it on her own to nice grandpa. J1 didn't correct her. He simply smiled for 5 minutes straight. When the proposal came, there were no cameras. No grand gesture with hundreds of people watching. He sat across from Grace in her apartment. The same small apartment with the crayon drawings on the fridge and Lily's toys on the floor. And he placed a simple ring on the table between them. I'm not offering you a palace, he said. I'm offering you a family. A son who already loves your daughter. And a man who promises to spend every day making sure you never regret this. Grace looked at the ring for a long time. Then she looked at Lily, who was sitting across the room, watching with giant curious eyes. Mama, Lily said seriously. Say yes. Grace laughed. A real laugh, the kind that filled the room. Yes, she said. The wedding made national news. Every headline focused on the billionaire, the love story, the fairy tale. But the moment that stayed with everyone who witnessed it, the one that the cameras somehow caught, was small and quiet. After the ceremony, Lily took J1's hand as they walked down the steps. She looked up at him and asked, Can I call you Grandpa now? For real. J1 stopped walking. His throat worked. His eyes filled. He knelt down to her level, this powerful, decorated, untouchable man. Right there on the steps, in front of everyone. You can call me family, he said. Lily nodded firmly. Like it was decided. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. She held his hand the rest of the way down. If this story moved you, subscribe so you never miss one. Like this video and share it with someone who believes in real love. And drop a comment. What part hit you hardest?